going to be asked. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are here this evening with Dr. Tammy Gutierrez, who is a board-certified family medicine doctor and a functional medicine specialist. I'm Gloria Treister. I'm a holistic health practitioner, and Dr. G and I have decided to form a collaboration. I'm going to put the theme of it, our mission, in the chat. We have collaborated to form Get Well With Us. And the reason being is that we feel that functional medicine today is too limited. It's hard enough to find a practitioner, but for many people, it's not affordable. And so Get Well With Us is a collaborative effort to bring functional medicine concepts to everyone in a simplified, personalized, and affordable way, so you can learn what it takes for you to enjoy a healthier life longer. We're trying to extend your health span, not just your lifespan. Two different things. But we want you to do it feeling confident that when you go out into the world every day and make choices, because every single thing you put in your mouth, every single thought that comes into your mind, you have choices to make. And we want to help you make the best choices for you. And it might not be the same as it is for someone else, and we honor that and we take that in with our information. But what we want you to know are good, solid, foundational basics. So that's what we're going to talk about this evening, and we hope you enjoy this. We will be asking for questions here and there, and we're going to ask you a few questions. So bear with us as we get your advice on what you want to know, so that we're offering things that are important to people who are following us and who want this information. So without further ado, Dr. Tammy Gutierrez, start with.
Awesome. Yeah, let's start talking about the gut. It is really kind of the cornerstone of functional medicine. The first thing you do is start with the gut. And the reason for that is that our gut, even though it's not as sexy as the heart or the brain and doesn't get some of the press attention, I think, that those other organs do, the gut is actually foundational to health problems in almost every other part of you. And when your gut is healthy, then you tend to be healthy and resilient. And so I really want to talk a little bit about how functional medicine informs our understanding of what the gut does for us and how it works, so that then you can start to think about the parts of your health that might be being affected or impacted. And at the end of this, in that follow-up email, you're also going to get a quick handout that I put together that just has some very simple, quick things that almost everybody would benefit from, to start healing your gut and help turn things around. You don't have to do everything on that list, but these are the things that I often start with my patients. A few of you are patients of mine, so some of this may sound very familiar to you. But first, I want to back up and kind of talk about why we care, right? What is the gut? And why is it so important? Why is that where we should start? I'm going to try to share my screen and show just 2 slides, but I think it may help more than looking at my face, will help for us to kind of talk about why these things are important. All right, let's see if I can get it to go to slideshow mode. Maybe. Yay. So what are all the different things that our gut does for us? The first one, and I think this is the obvious one, is it's where we absorb our nutrients, right? And that actually includes water as well. But except for oxygen, almost everything that we need for health and repair comes through the gut as an interface. And so if the gut is not healthy, then we are going to also be struggling for anything else to be healthy. Because how can we get all of the various minerals, vitamins, phytonutrients, and macronutrients, protein, carbs, fats, fiber, that let us do everything else the body can do? And so that's a really important piece that contributes to it being so foundational. It's also a barrier. It's really our first barrier in many ways to toxins and disease, because the most voluminous interaction we have with the world is through our mouths, actually. And so if we are taking in germs that are trying to hurt us, if we are taking in toxins, it's really the gut that's often the first line of defense, trying to not absorb it or if we do absorb it, trying to package it up and ship it back out and detoxify so that we don't have to get sick from it. A part of that barrier to disease is also our microbiome. But our microbiome is so much more than just a barrier to disease. I want to make sure everyone here understands that when I talk about your gut microbiome, I am talking about a trillion organisms, right? A trillion cells. There are actually more microbe cells and microbe DNA inside you than there are you cells, right? By a factor of 10 at least. And so it's really striking how important these things are to our overall health. Our microbiome not only helps populate the area and make it harder for unfriendly microbes to find space to come in, it also interfaces with our immune system, right? And helps calibrate and train our immune system to say this is a friendly something or this is an unfriendly something. It also helps break down some of those nutrients and even create some of those nutrients. I don't know if you guys know this, but actually the food that your intestinal lining cells eat is actually butyrate and other short chain fatty acids that are made by your microbiome. The food you eat does not actually feed your gut lining. It feeds the rest of you, but your gut lining is fed by your bacteria. It's also an amazing player in conversations with your brain and your central nervous system. And so that microbiome also has a huge impact on our moods, on our energy, on our metabolism, right? So we talked about weight and weight regulation. The microbe balance in your gut has a huge role to play in how much you are spiking your insulin and regulating your sugars, on how many calories you both crave and also can process in a given day, on what your sleep patterns are, on what your energy and exercise patterns are. Your microbiome is stunningly important. One of the most striking studies that I remember reading when I was doing this training was this brilliant study done where they took rats who had been designed to be a model for diabetes. And so they actually altered their genes in order to make them gain weight. So these were obese rats because of that genetic modification. And then they took normal rats and they killed off the bacteria inside the obese rat's gut. And they did a stool transplant from the normal weight rat. This isn't changing the genetics of the obese rat, right? All they did was give them the same microbiome that the healthy weight rat had. And the obese rat lost weight and became healthy weight instead. And when they did it in reverse and took the microbiome from the genetically obese rats and put them in the skinny rats, it made them gain weight and become obese. So even those genetic alterations were not as powerful as the microbiome in deciding where that weight was going to go. And so that was a stunning example of how powerful that communication really is. But it really, in my mind, is almost like your utility system, like the people who run the gas company and the electric company and the trash pickup service and the city council, all those people that make your life work smoothly that you never see are basically like your microbiome. They are behind the scenes doing so much work to keep you healthy and strong. And then there's that whole gut-brain interface. Your microbiome and your gut cells themselves actually talk back and forth to your brain more than your brain talks to any other part of you, or actually all the other parts of you put together. And so it really is a part of the central nervous system. It isn't really two separate organisms. And so this means that neurotransmitters and moods and, again, attention, ability to focus, all these things have a root in the gut. When I see people who have depression or anxiety or ADHD or autism, one of the first things I do is try to get their gut healed, because a lot of times those symptoms just disappear once the gut is healthy. We also talk about the fact that the gut is our exit strategy for many types of toxins and trash, right? And so taking out the trash is a really important piece of health, and that is another thing that it does. And then it looks like I forgot to put it on the list, but the last piece I want to talk about is really that immune system regulation. Because the gut is this huge central station for so many messages in and out, it is also central station for your immune system. About 70% of your immune system lines your gut. And so this is a huge place where allergies get made, where sensitivities get made, where tolerance gets made, right? It's not only bad stuff, it's good stuff too. And so that immune interface really determines autoimmunity and so many other ways in which our immune system can move us toward health or away from health. And so it's a really important piece. And some of that is the microbiome, and some of it is the lining cells themselves. I want to give one more graphic about some of this just to help make it easier to understand what we're really talking about. How many of you, maybe toss in the chat, how many of you have heard of leaky gut?
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Right? This is a big buzzword, but how many of you feel confident that you understand what it means and what's really happening in there when somebody says that your gut is leaking? I mean, what's it leaking? Right? Okay. And for some people, this is a new thing. So we're going to talk about this. If you look at this slide, this is a picture of some of the structure here. This gut lumen, or the inside, right? The inside lining where the food is being digested, is up here. And you'll notice that there's all kinds of things floating around in there. We have a base layer of cells right here, healthy ones on the left and not so healthy ones on the right. A base layer of cells that have little fingers to sneak out there and grab food and nutrients and other things, and to talk to the microbiome. These cells also secrete this beautiful mucus layer that's basically like soil, right? That those microbiome grow in. And so that healthy mucus layer provides healthy soil. And then the microbes provide wonderful crosstalk communication and digestive function and defense on that top layer. We have a couple places like this dendritic cell, right? Where the immune system that lives underneath those cells can reach out and communicate with the microbiome. But you'll notice that sometimes there are bigger spaces in between those cells than there are supposed to be, right? And so that's actually what that term leaky gut means, is that there's extra space between those little wiggly top cells, and things that are not allowed in are passing in, right? And they're getting down here to this underneath layer where the immune system sits. And that immune system is seeing those proteins that are not broken down and saying, oh my goodness, this is a virus, right? And so leaky gut is basically triggering an antiviral immune response that makes you feel sick, right? And it can cause any kind of symptom that you've ever had in response to a virus, whether that's headache or rash or cough or congestion or, tummy upset, diarrhea, constipation, you name it. Or you could just be tired and kind of foggy, right? Most of us don't feel our sharpest when we are not well. You could have joint pain or muscle pain. Anything you could ever imagine coming from a virus could come from this sensitization, depending on what kind of protein gets in and what type of immune response you generate. And so that leaky gut is letting things in. The immune system is getting angry, and then all kinds of mess ensues. Because once you've told that dendritic cell that, I'm just going to use an example and say this is gluten, right? Once you've told that dendritic cell that gluten is bad, well, now it's out there looking for gluten. And every time you put gluten in, it says, alarm, bad guy on the premises, right? And it triggers that response again. And so it becomes ever more sensitive and ever more upregulated the more exposure that you have, right? Does this make sense? Let's have people take just a second and chime in. Do people feel like they have an idea now of what leaky gut is and why we care and what it means visually in a way that maybe they didn't before? Especially the people that chimed in and said they weren't so familiar with that concept. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Anyone else? Yes.
All right. And we're going to talk about how you
Please.
kind of prevent and treat it. So, like, where does it come from? Right. So, sometimes what's damaging those cells? What's damaging those junctions? Sometimes it's toxins and things in our food, right, that actually kill off our microbiome and leave these cells vulnerable. Or maybe we take steroids, or maybe we take a bunch of aspirin or Tylenol or ibuprofen, and we end up damaging that mucus layer. And so then the cells get sick and damaged, and they can't make those nice little connections with their neighbors anymore. And so things start getting in. Maybe it's alcohol or cigarette smoke, right? These kinds of toxins also damage the lining cells. And so then you don't end up having a nice intact fence anymore. You got holes or maybe even loss of whole cells, letting things in. Sometimes it is also pesticides, herbicides, right? So many different environmental toxins can harm the gut and trigger this process. And so the body can repair itself if it has the things that it needs, right? Cells regrow. And so we want to talk about all the different ways that you can help, first off, prevent the damage as much as possible, and then try to start repairing the damage if it's there. Okay. All right. I'm gonna take away all the scary cells and just get back to conversation here. Um, so I really want to kind of talk through a functional medicine approach to gut health. Leaky gut isn't the only kind of problem that all those things can certainly cause. It's just a really common one. We also have what's called dysbiosis, right? Or inappropriate function of the bacteria that are supposed to live there, either an overgrowth of bad guys with something like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or a lack of diversity and healthy things. That's super common. Everybody that's ever taken an antibiotic has knocked off quite a few of their good guys in the process. And to show you how powerful that effect is on your gut and therefore on your autoimmune system, a study came out, goodness, about 20 years ago now, that showed children who had taken 3 or more rounds of antibiotics by the age of 8, right, which is most Americans actually, had a 4-fold increased risk of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. I'm going to say that again. 3 rounds of antibiotics, like for strep and ear infections, common childhood illnesses. 3 rounds of antibiotics before the age of 8 quadrupled their risk of an autoimmune attack on the gut lining. Okay, that is how powerful that microbiome is. And not only when we take antibiotics, but when we eat Roundup and other pesticides, a lot of them kill off our microbiome. And when we are chronically stressed, right? One of the main reasons that stress causes so much harm for us is cortisol damages that mucus layer, makes it harder for those bacteria to grow and stay healthy, creates leaky gut, and also prevents us from doing repairs effectively. And so, really, cortisol's effect on causing autoimmune problems, on causing all kinds of disease, is often mediated primarily through its gut effects. And so chronic stress and talking to yourself nicely and setting good boundaries, not just between your gut lining cells, but between your neighbors, between your family members, all these things is also another really important piece of staying healthy. And so I want to really dive in to some of those simple types of tips, right? So how do we take this information and put it to work for you so that you can have the happy, healthy cells on the left and not the sad, disease looking cells on the right of that slide? All right. So first and foremost, what you put in is really communication with your gut. So we need to put in lots of nutrients, right? So that we can actually have the nutrients to keep things healthy and to do repairs when they're necessary. But Americans are not that great at doing that. We eat a very impoverished diet. In fact, the standard American diet is very appropriately abbreviated SAD, right? SAD. And so, unfortunately, most people do not eat all of the different nutrients that we need to do repairs. And so, my first vote would be for people to eat lots of colorful foods and lots of healthy fats, things like omega-3 containing fish, your salmon and sardines and mackerel, anchovies, cod, well-sourced eggs, egg yolk, if the chicken eats a lot of bugs and plays outside, actually have a fair bit of omega-3. Flax seeds, chia seeds, these kinds of things all help provide you one of the most important nutrients for repair, which is omega-3 fatty acids. Here again, Americans, not so great on their omega-3 intake, and minimizing your processed omega-6 fats. So if you want to eat omega-6, it should be in the form of whole foods like nuts and seeds, and not really in the form of all these processed oils, sunflower and corn oil and soybean oil and safflower oil and vegetable oil, which is just a blend of all these things, canola oil. You know, you really want to get them from their original foods. If you need to add an oil, olive oil, ghee, which is clarified butter, avocado oil, coconut oil, really. So it's your fruit oils and ghee are your best bets for healthy oils to provide really nourishing omega-9 fats, and then those other foods to provide omega-3 fats so that you can heal your gut and keep it healthy. We also need a lot of vitamin D. We cannot repair the gut if we don't get vitamin D, but it's the one nutrient that you don't get through your gut. You get it through your skin, right? And so if you're getting plenty of sunshine, then you probably don't live in Ohio. But if you don't get lots of sunshine, then you can take vitamin D as a capsule. And so you can boost your vitamin D. If you have any kind of health issues, I really encourage you to ask your doctor to get your vitamin D levels checked, right? So that you know if you have enough vitamin D, and enough vitamin D is not 30, it's 60 to 80. And so really making sure you have enough vitamin D and enough omega-3s, and then going and eating that rainbow, right? That food rainbow. I know a couple of you are patients of mine, so you don't get to answer this question, but some of my the people who aren't my patients, there are 6 food rainbow colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black. Who can tell me what the 6th one is? Who can tell me what that last one is that doesn't fit in Roy G. Biv, usually what we think of as a rainbow? And while you guys are thinking, there was a question about non-animal based omega fatty acids. I recommend flax, chia, hemp seed. And if you feel like you need a supplement, they make great algae based omega-3 supplements. White or brown? Yay! Awesome. Nice job, guys. So white, tan, and brown is that 6th food color, right? Things like your mushrooms and cauliflower and garlic and nuts and seeds, all those amazing helpful foods. So yay. So trying to get all 6 of those colors every single day is a really powerful piece of healing your gut too. And when you do that, you usually also bring along a bunch of fiber, because fiber is really the fuel for your microbiome. Fiber, by definition, are starches, right? Carbohydrates that your body cannot absorb. So why are we eating them if we can't absorb them? We're feeding the trillion utility workers that cohabitate with us and help us make life possible. And so it's really important that we don't starve them. We need to give them lots of fiber. Who here thinks they know how many grams of fiber a functional medicine doctor wants you to eat a day? Take a guess. See if you can type in the chat. By the way, like Gloria and I can see what you write, but none of your peers can see what you write. So there is no shame. Just type in whatever you want. Wow, that's a big one. So one vote was 150 grams. That would be really impressive. I would really like to shake your hand if you are eating 150 grams a day. That would be amazing. The average American gets 11 grams of fiber a day, but we would like you to get somewhere between 35 and 50, right? So a lot of you are actually pretty close. I don't know what you would have to eat to get 150. You would probably have to take a supplement, but it is an awesome thing to get even 35 grams of fiber. Most people feel so much better. We are going to actually attach to the email a fiber tracker, and I would challenge all of you to actually just check, see how much fiber you're getting, and try to compare whether you're getting that 35 grams minimum every day. Indigenous peoples around the planet tend to eat about 50 grams of fiber a day. They also eat a much more diverse diet than we do. So I'm also going to challenge you to try new foods. Go to the supermarket or go to your farmer's market, even better. Look at what's in season and try something you've never eaten before, right? Don't just eat the same 5 vegetables that you always eat. See if you can branch out, try new fruits, try new vegetables, try new nuts, try new seeds, right? Watermelon seeds should be coming back in season here shortly, and they're delicious. And so see if you can play with this and really start experimenting and gaining that. Someone asked if white rice is a good source of fiber. The answer to that is no. The fibrous part of rice is in the coating that would make it brown rice. However, unfortunately, the fibrous coating of rice is also typically full of arsenic. And so I would not encourage a ton of brown rice as your primary fiber source. The most fiber-rich foods are things like leafy greens, nuts and seeds, legumes. Lentils are possibly top of that chart. Chickpeas are also really good, but all the beans are full of fiber, which is why if you're not used to eating high fiber diet consistently, then if you suddenly have a bowl of bean soup, you know, your microbes have a little bit of a disruption in there and people feel very gassy afterwards, right? And so that fiber does need to be ramped up gradually. If you decided that, oh, I normally eat 12 grams, but tomorrow I'm going to eat 35 grams, your tummy will probably be upset. And so please do not, double your fiber intake in one day. Try to go up a couple grams of fiber every few days until you get up to a healthier level. Berries, apples, and other tree fruits are good. Grapes are good. Again, most nuts and seeds are very high in fiber. I love adding flax and chia to things. It's so easy to add to almost any recipe, and it adds both omega-3 fats and fiber. Although if you're going to use them for omega-3, they have to be freshly ground. You can't buy ground flax. The fiber will still be there, but the omega-3 disappears within a couple days of grinding it. And so by the time it hits the store shelves, that ship has sailed. So you buy whole flax seeds and grind them up the day you want to use them. I use a coffee grinder. So anyway, those are great ways to boost your fiber and really kind of help get things moving in there, right? Because fiber feeds our good guys, and it also helps hold moisture so that we can take out the trash more efficiently. Everybody in this room and everybody, period, really needs to be taking out the trash at least once a day. So this is another really important piece of promoting gut health, which is making sure that you are emptying those toxins. Your colon is very good at reabsorbing them if they sit in there too long. And so you really need to empty that trash every single day. I know a lot of people were raised on the idea that it's okay as long as it doesn't hurt when you poop, that if you poop every other day or even every third day, it's okay. That might just be normal for you. I'm going to tell you that from a functional medicine standpoint, we would like you to poop 1 to 3 times a day. And if you eat that 35 to 50 grams of fiber a day and drink enough water to keep your pee clear when you pee in the toilet, then you will probably not have a problem doing that. Okay. There is a role for movement in that also, right? Walking, moving around helps move the gut along too. And so I am going to do a shout out for exercise as well as nutrition. But these things are important to take out the trash. Your liver works really hard to take all the mess and package it up and ship it back into the gut for exit of the body. And then I imagine it would feel really sad when all of that comes right back to the liver to be done again because it sat in the colon for too long. Okay, so I'm going to review the dietary pieces that I really want to focus on here. One is I want you to eat that rainbow. So you're full of nutrients and you're full of fiber to really help support healthy gut stuff. I want you to source your foods well. I want you to minimize the amount of pesticides and herbicides and other toxins that are coming in with your food. And that includes a lot of processed foods, right? And so Americans tend to eat an amazing amount of not even just processed, but even ultra processed foods, which really have almost no nutrient value and have a lot of toxins that your body then has to work hard without any support to clear back out for you. And so I'm a fan of foods that don't even have a nutrition label on them, right? Like if you buy bag of grapes, it just says grapes. There's not an ingredients list to read. It's just grapes. But your grapes should be organic. There is something called the Environmental Working Group, and you really want to kind of just start learning a little bit about which foods are important to buy organic, which foods aren't. I know this is a ton of information and stuff to think about, so I recommend taking your like 5 favorite foods and look them up, right? Just start there. Just start there and see whether those 5 favorite foods are things that can be eaten fine, conventional, or whether they should be purchased organic. And then every week or two, just look up a new one and see. Getting things local also increases their nutritional value and tends to decrease the amount of processing crap that happens to them. Trying to shop on the outside of that supermarket when you are in the supermarket, and in the summer in Ohio, trying to find your local farmers market so that you can actually talk to the people who raise your food and find out what's going on, and really often get cheaper organic quality produce that just isn't certified organic because the farmers don't have the money to do that and they prefer to sell directly. So there's lots of great ways to try to find wonderful, clean fruits and vegetables. And also, the farmers market's a great place to meet local farmers who raise animal proteins. If you do eat animal proteins, sourcing those locally and knowing the farmer also usually gets you much cheaper, high quality animal proteins too, right? Because we don't want to be killing off our good guys and making tons of toxin work for our bodies. We want to be putting in whole foods in lots of colors with lots of fiber and lots of healthy fats. And that's how we're going to heal our guts with food. If you do think that you have leaky gut, you may also have developed some of those food sensitivities. So I want to talk for just a second if you think that's you. So if you have, especially if you have things like allergies, asthma, eczema, or if you have migraines, or if you notice that certain foods really seem to make your tummy not feel good, or if you're achy and sore all the time, then chances are good that you have some leaky gut going on and you have developed some food sensitivities. The foods that are most likely to cause food sensitivities are the foods that are hardest to digest, right? And the foods we eat the most because they're the ones most likely to find a way in before they got all the way broken down. Something you eat once a year is very unlikely to have provoked a food sensitivity reaction to you because odds are slim that it happened to be there when a hole was right next to it and that it slipped in undigested. So now, if you don't understand that, then actually the common food sensitivities make a lot of sense, right? Dairy proteins, gluten, corn, these things are hard to digest, right? They're much longer proteins, much more difficult, and they're ubiquitous in the American diet. And so a lot of people have undigested pieces of those that are getting in. Gluten and casein, one of the dairy proteins, also actually damage those connections between the gut cells. And so they make leaky gut more likely. And GMO corn also comes with a bacterial toxin, which again damages the gut interface. The immune system isn't a fan of bacterial toxins. And so that's another reason why we see a lot of corn allergies and corn sensitivities since GMO corn became so standard. Other GMO products like soy are also common irritants, and soy has become a major food sensitivity for many people because Roundup, which is why they made soy GMO, Roundup damages the gut microbiome and therefore the gut lining, and then predisposes to that leaky gut. So it kind of created that interface problem for soy as well. And so I often recommend that if you feel like you have these other health problems, sometimes it's worth doing an elimination diet. If you don't have someone to help you do that, then starting with things like dairy and gluten and sugar are usually my top 3 to tell people to start with, although you can certainly find resources out there for a wider array. Sometimes a paleo or a Whole30 diet is an easy way to let the internet help guide you. And if you really need help, later this summer, we may be trying to offer some guidance on how to do an elimination diet properly. You really want to remove whatever you're suspicious of completely, And I mean completely, not like a little bit occasionally, that doesn't count. Your immune system only needs a tiny exposure to be irritated with it. And it only has to happen every 23 days because it takes 23 days to cut your antibody response in half. So even if you're only having it every couple weeks, that's enough to keep your immune response high. So if you want to eliminate things and see how that feels, you have to remove them for a solid 3 to 4 weeks before you try them back. And then you try them back a couple servings at a time, and you wait 3 to 5 days to see if you have any of those viral type response symptoms, excuse me. So that's kind of a quick and dirty way to sort of say, do I think I have a food sensitivity? Here's how I would find out, right? And I do usually recommend that people don't do them one at a time. I recommend that they take them out a couple at a time so that you can really feel a difference, and then add them back one at a time every 5 days until you figure out how that goes. Someone mentioned that they'd like to try eliminating gluten, but gluten is everywhere. And so I agree, gluten is somewhat ubiquitous, although it has gotten way better. I've been gluten-free since 2011, and it was much harder back then, but now there's lots and lots of options. Again, looking for things that are labeled paleo can help, because paleo automatically is gluten-free. Looking for, most grocery stores now have kind of a health food section that will have a lot of different things, even things like pastas now. There's lots of lentil pasta, chickpea pasta, soy pasta. Like there's lots of delicious non-grain options, right? Like those are legumes, they're not even grains. And so there's lots of ways that you can have this. There's some wonderful gluten-free breads that you can buy. There's tons of recipes online. Again, if you ever want to automatically just remove gluten and dairy, and you want to type in like macaroni and cheese and then just put the word paleo after it before you write recipe, you'll get all kinds of gluten and dairy-free versions of these kinds of recipes. Paleo also means that there's no added crap. And that's why I like to use the word paleo as my keyword, because paleo also removes all of the additives, right? The red dyes and the processed sugars and the everything, right? And so paleo is a nice quick fix to get a clean recipe that will be gluten and dairy free if you're looking for something. Somebody mentioned, is GERD curable? So GERD is gastroesophageal reflux, right? Or heartburn, 100%. It is curable. And I will tell you, most people with GERD have some food sensitivities. Dairy is number one for that. And so just like your friends with asthma, allergies, eczema, dairy is nearly always at least one of your culprits. And by doing a quick elimination of some of the top offenders and being off that for a solid, again, ideally 4 weeks, most of my patients can then start to come off of their acid medications when they come see me for GERD. I will say one thing though, if you are on a PPI, proton pump inhibitor, right, like Prevacid or Prilosec, or any of the protonics, I mean, there's like 6 or 7 of them. If you are on a proton pump inhibitor, you are suppressing acid secretion almost completely. And so if you suddenly try to stop that, the body doesn't like to be told hard, fast no for one of its normal functions. And so it's been under the surface, like pushing, like waiting. When do I get to secrete acid? When do I get to secrete acid? Kind of like pushing down on a cork, right? And so if you just pull your hand off the cork, what happens? The cork goes flying, right? Comes flying out of the water. And so people who have been on strong acid suppression for a while, if they just stop it cold turkey, their acid usually goes crazy high, and they end up having a recurrence of GERD symptoms, even if they were doing the gut healing that needed to happen. And so you always want to titrate down, kind of like alcohol or caffeine. If you're coming off of those 2 substances, you always want to titrate down. Okay, so you would go to half a dose for a couple weeks, or you would go every other day and at that point, and then every 3rd day, and then you could stop. Because that's another reason why, even if the GERD is fixed from a root cause perspective, sometimes people think it isn't, because the medicine creates almost like a withdrawal process for them. I'm glad if you're not taking a medication and you change your diet, then your tummy can just feel better, and you will notice that you don't have as much heartburn, and it feels awesome. Somebody said that they think calling the extras removed in paleo that they should be called crap. They should, right? I worked super hard to get my kids not to eat things like crayons. I do not understand why we would put anything called red in food, right? Like I just don't get it. And so we're strange. We're strange in this country about how we approach food. It's really, yeah, I have no desire to eat something that is turquoise. Like I just don't understand why even people want to eat this. So I agree with you. I do think it's crap. Um,
So
all right.
we're getting close to the end
I,
of the
I
juice.
know. Thank you for reminding me, Gloria. I
I
have so
want you
many
to
things I would like
cover
to share.
what you wanted to say. And then
Yes,
I'd really love to grab a few extra minutes to kind of ask for your help, everyone who's listening.
yes. So we've talked a lot about the quality of food that you're putting in and the nutrient value of food and trying to decrease the harmful pieces that may be trying to come along with, right? I also want to talk really briefly about digestion. Coffee doesn't have to be a bad guy. We'll come to that in a second. But digestion sometimes gets derailed either by all of the stress response, right? Because when we're in fight or flight, we are not in rest and digest. And so one of the reasons we struggle is everybody's running on adrenaline, and that turns off your ability to digest your food properly, which creates problems with your microbiome, which creates problems with your gut lining, and starts to seed a lot of these other problems. And so one simple trick that you could all do today is start each meal with 4 ounces of hot water with either a quarter of a lemon squeezed in or a spoonful of apple cider vinegar, and make that the first thing you put in your mouth when you sit down to eat. And take about a minute and a half or two while you're drinking your hot acid water, and telling everybody that, hey, it's time to make digestive juices. Take that time and reset. Let go of the adrenaline. Take some deep breaths, say grace, do a gratitude practice of some other sort, but put yourself out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. You can also pick foods that are easier to digest, foods that have been sprouted, foods that have been soaked ahead of time, if they're nuts or seeds or grains or legumes, foods that have been fermented, things that are already helping your body break things down. And so that's another trick to help really get the most out of your food. There are other tips on your handout that you will get to see later, but if you could do those two things, right? Pick more digestible foods and start each meal in rest and digest with a little hit of acid, telling everybody, hey, let's release those digestive enzymes. Many people find that that starts alleviating their tummy distress already. And even if you have heartburn, lemon water is not going to bother you. If lemon water bothers you, you may have an ulcer and you need to get seen. But gastritis and heartburn usually do not mind the lemon water. You're not eating a lemon, you're just doing a quarter of a lemon in about 4 to 6 ounces of hot water. It does have to be hot. Cold water does not count. We talked about the nutrients like omega-3 and vitamin D that are really critical. You have to have enough of those to do the repairs. So if you do have heartburn and things are rough and raw in there, if you don't have the vitamin D or the omega-3, you can't patch it. You can't fix it. And so you need to have those nutrients along with removing the source of the problem. We talked a little bit briefly about exercise supporting gut motility, but things like peppermint tea also can be another really nice way to do that. And something called a squatty potty, where you bring your knees up above your belly button, right? So that you're in more of a squatting position when you're on the toilet, will actually open up much more space for the stool to pass and help people who struggle with constipation. And then last but not least, we talked a little about probiotics, I think in the chat, but really feeding those good guys lots of fiber, but also replenishing them, because so many things that we put in our mouth kill them all. And so really trying to get fermented foods is my favorite, or probiotics, into your system to try to help regrow the parts of your garden that have maybe been damaged over time. And so really trying to, have a whole diversity. Yogurt, not my favorite. Even if you find a non-dairy one, usually only has 1 or 2 strains of bacteria and not very many. If you're trying to grow a community of 1 trillion, putting in something like 10 million is just never going to get you there, right? And so you really want to be like 50 billion if you're going to do a probiotic. And fermented foods don't probably have 50 billion per spoonful, but they can get you pretty high numbers too, because they grow a diverse, lots of different strains, and much higher quantities than the little tiny bit that's used to ferment the milk. And so I do encourage people to eat kimchi and sauerkraut and escabeche and, Cleveland Kraut and Wake Robin are two wonderful local brands that you can find at most of your good grocery stores in Northeast Ohio. Or if you live somewhere else, check out your local stores, find in the refrigerated section what your local ferments are, and start playing around with those flavors because we want to regrow a beautiful, healthy garden for you. Okay. All right, Gloria.
Okay. Did you want to get the coffee question off the table
Oh,
quickly?
yes. And so coffee, someone asked about coffee. Coffee does not have to be bad, especially if you have just a little bit. Caffeine does provoke an adrenaline response, right? It kind of mimics those same receptor effects and it does hit the adrenals. And so it will sometimes elicit a cortisol response if you're having a bunch of it. And so, in small quantities, coffee is okay. I like chicory while we're on the subject of gut healing. Chicory is a coffee alternative that actually has no caffeine and can be mixed 50-50 with your coffee. And then eventually you can shift it up to being the whole thing as you wean. Remember, no cold turkey on the caffeine, wean down the caffeine that you're taking. And chicory is full of fiber. So chicory also helps feed your good guys. So it can be a coffee component or a coffee substitute that actually is very gut protective, unlike the coffee, which tends to be slightly more on the harmful side if you have very much of it. All right. I have a vote from one person saying the apple cider vinegar helps when you take it before meals. Somebody asked a question that said poppy, and I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it was the squatty potty. Maybe that's the question. Squatty potty is a brand of stool that wraps around your toilet to help lift your feet up, but you could honestly use a pile of books or an Amazon box, whatever would get your knees up above the level of your belly button. Okay. All right. One person saying that she cut dairy because of her son's eczema. She's breastfeeding and he got checked for allergies. Oh God. And the doctor told her to add dairy back. Because the allergy test didn't show it and then to watch it. So yeah. So I would say I would remove it for a solid month. And then if his symptoms are resolved, you can challenge it back. You could eat 2 or 3 servings in one day and then nurse. But the problem when you're nursing is that it doesn't leave your milk fully for like 21 days. And so, if he does end up having a reaction or then you might have another month at least before you start to see some relief. And so when I was breastfeeding a baby that had a ton of food sensitivities, I did not really challenge back until we were getting close to weaning, so that we can do it. I will tell you, dairy is almost always one of the bad guys. And so I guess my vote would be to just ditch it. My vote would be to ditch it. As far as how much apple cider vinegar, really just a nice heaping spoonful is fine, about the equivalent, right, of squeezing in a quarter of a lemon. Poppy's a prebiotic soda. Okay, that's fine. Just be mindful of the amount of sugar. Kombucha is another great option. And so I don't know Poppy exactly and what the ingredients are, but there are a lot of prebiotic sodas and probiotic sodas now, like Olipop is a fermented soda. When my little one wants to have a float occasionally, like for her birthday, we will use Olipop. So she's at least getting some good bacteria along with the sugar. But not a ton of soda. All right. Yes, of course. All right.
All right.
Other questions that
Take
people
a
have.
deep breath. And I have a question for our listeners because
Right.
you guys have gotten some great information. You've been able to ask your questions and got some great answers. We're trying to figure out the best way to provide good information for you. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. The first one is if you would be interested in having monthly calls where you could ask your questions and or review lab results with me and Dr. G, with your Get Well With Us team, but it would be something that you would pay for. So let us know. I'm launching the poll. No one knows who's answering what, so you can answer any way you like. But we're definitely interested in figuring out the best way to keep this kind of information coming We're still going to do monthly master classes. That is in the plan for now. Once a month, 1 hour. This time slot seemed to be better for most people.
Yeah,
So,
to see.
yeah,
This is
but
better.
please give us your feedback on this because I've got a couple more for you. And in
Okay.
the meantime, if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them.
Okay.
But please give us the benefit of your information of what you would like to see so that we can take that and use it and come back to you with even better programming.
And just so you all know, the topic next month in July is going to be brain health, right? So I mentioned that the gut and the brain are one organ. So we're doing them back to back. We're starting with the gut, and then we're going to talk about the brain in July, which will be a lead in to helping people, hopefully, who need access to things like my concussion protocol and other stuff, because July and August is unfortunately concussion season.
I'm going to end that poll.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go back and thank you for your answers on that.
Excellent.
And we've also created some courses, and we're going to tell you a little bit about the one that's coming up now that we just launched, which is a detox course. We're doing courses that are either going to be fully self-guided online. You take them whenever you want. I just launched that. So self-guided online courses complete at your own pace on your own schedule, or live online classes, or combination of both. So, okay, let us know what you prefer. We do have one that is self-guided on detox right now, and I'm going to put a link to it while you're answering in the chat, along with a coupon code because of Global Wellness Day. We had a special that was 50% off. So if you are interested in learning about detox, and there's a lot to know, so we're trying to give you as much as we can. Here's the link. It's on our Get Well With Us. You can click on that. And the code is GWD, standing for Global Wellness Day, which we celebrate every year. I'm a U.S. ambassador, and Dr. G is like also one by proxy. Okay, so a combination. Okay, it looks like, all right. And last but not least, I want to ask you, if you haven't answered, please do. Okay, live is more. Okay, and then we're going to go back and ask you one more thing about which topics you're most interested. And on this one, you can check off as many as you like.
Yeah.
Okay. Give you a minute.
While you're answering that, I wanted to say one more thing about the mental health piece, because I know we touched on it a little bit, but I don't know that we touched on it fully. Another really important way in which the gut affects mental health is that when the gut is not working well, sometimes we're not absorbing our proteins adequately. And people don't always think about this, but neurotransmitters are basically made from amino acids, which are the breakdown products of protein, right? And so we need a full complement of healthy proteins as well in order to have appropriate mood levels. And if your gut is not working well, supporting that digestive process, you need stomach acid in order to break down proteins. And so really making sure that you are using that hot lemon water if you're struggling with mood in any way, shape, or form, and really making sure that you are getting good, clean protein sources, and probably more than you expect, right? So really trying to get a good sizable amount, at least a quarter of each meal, maybe more, from protein. It doesn't have to be animal protein, right? It can be nuts and seeds, legumes. It can be all kinds of different options, but you really do need a lot of protein, and you need to be able to digest it. So doing that hot lemon water and making sure you're getting lots of protein can go a long way to improving neurotransmitter balance and helping your gut and brain be able to work better together. Awesome. Awesome. Kind of across the
Like
board.
yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like the poll is only allowing people to choose one.
Oh,
So,
okay. Oh
yeah,
yeah, it does say single choice. Okay.
okay.
So brain
Sorry.
health, hormonal. It's okay. And I know some people mentioned menopausal and hormonal changes in the chat as well of things that that would somebody said they would pick all.
No,
I understand. We're just trying to figure
thank
out
you.
what order to roll some of this stuff out in as we get started. We really just started trying to do this spring because there just was so many people that were trying to come and see me for various reasons, and I just can't keep up. And so we're trying to make sure that we give people access. And again, not everybody can afford the one-on-one time. And so we're trying to find ways to make it more accessible and more affordable for people. Because I can do a little bit in these, free 1 hour kind of group sessions. But we really want to also give people the ability to dive deep and really get all of those tips. Gloria reins me in. I think at the noon session today, I I dove a little bit too sciencey for some people, and so I want people to be able to get the information in a digestible format, spread out over time, so that you can use it and have all the handouts and supports and things that we can offer. Um, I know we have 1 more minute left. Gloria, was there anything else you wanted to ask them?
I just love it if you'd all visit getwellwithus.net and take a look at what we're doing. Getwellwithus@gmail is our email address. I'm going to put that in the chat so you have it. And if you have questions or you have suggestions, like, hey guys, why don't you do something on this topic? I'd like to know more. We're so open to creating what you want to hear. What we want to tell you isn't important. It's what you want to know. So please do communicate. We're very open to that. And our whole goal is to make getting and staying well the easy choice, always, where you feel confident and clear about the choices that you're making. So maybe we could do one thing and have you put into the chat, what's your best takeaway from today? What did you love learning today about the gut? Would you share that with us? I'll tell you what I learned that I didn't know. I'm
What
gonna
was that, Gloria?
that paleo, if you put paleo in, it'll be gluten-free. So if you're looking for recipes
Yeah.
and you want to go gluten-free, I think that's great. Nobody has a gluten deficiency. We don't need gluten. So
Correct. Or a dairy deficiency. I just really want to throw this out there. I know it always makes me the bad guy, but honestly, even more than gluten intolerance, dairy intolerance is almost universal in some form or other. We are not baby cows. And unless you are milking the cow and getting baby cow spit and microbes into your gut to help you digest it, cows have 4 stomachs, they eat grass, they chew their cud. Like their digestive system and our digestive system have almost nothing in common. And so it's weird to try to drink cow breast milk, right? There's no animal out there. There are animals that eat other animals, animals that eat plants, and animals that eat both. But there are no other animals that try to eat even their own breast milk after they wean, and definitely not other animals' breast milk. And so it's a weird food. It's a weird food from a scientific perspective. And it, from a health perspective, I just see it cause so much harm, like so much harm. All right. So
okay,
people learn that it takes 23 days to cut your antibody response in half. That's right. The approach to sensitivities and allergies, to eat the rainbow. Woohoo! About eliminating for 4 weeks. That seems to be a big one. That seems to be a big one. I'm glad that was helpful. I've had so many patients come and be like, I tried taking dairy out or I tried taking gluten out for a week and it didn't make any difference. And I was like, yep, that's totally true. If you take it out for a week, it's not going to make any difference. And again, so many people react to both. I recommend taking both out at the same time because if your room is half on fire or all on fire, it still looks smoky, And so if you really want to see the smoke go down, you need to do both at the same time.
that's great. In the 4 ounces of hot water with a spoonful of apple cider vinegar, a quarter of a lemon before you eat, and take that me time, that chill time before
That's
you
right.
eat. Great one too. I love that one.
There was one last question too, is goat's milk closer to ours? And the answer to that is yes. But if you've been eating cow's milk and become sensitive to whey or casein, the two dominant proteins, they are the same proteins in goat's milk. And so you can become sensitized to all of it. But goat's milk, if you know you have a dairy issue and you heal your gut and then you want to try adding things back, goat's milk is often a good first step to challenge back. But it is still potentially risky. Okay.
A lot of thank yous, and thank
Yes.
you all
Thank
for
you
giving us
guys.
an hour of your time this evening to learn something about health and wellness. It makes us very happy. That's our mission. Hopefully we accomplish that with you this evening. Look for an email from me tomorrow. It'll have everything in it that we promised. I've got a list. And have a
Awesome.
great evening, everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
A wellness.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
All right.